All right, good morning, everyone. Hi, hello, good morning. Thank you so much for your patience. Uh, can you hear me now?
Hey, y'all.
I don't, okay. Yeah, thank you so much for your patience. This is a hybrid event, and so we have been working with the technical. You can't hear me still? Can you hear me now?
Can we amp the mic?
Yeah. Is this better? Okay, thank you. So thank you for your patience in filling all the emails and the registration links and for showing up after a long day of sessions yesterday. This is the business meeting of the 109th Assembly, and I'm just going to do some brief, some housekeeping. Could we turn on captioning? Okay.
So Emily, can you turn on captions, please?
Yeah. So let's get those started, and just confirmation that folks on Zoom can hear what's happening in the room okay?
Yes.
Great. And so just so folks in the room know, Emily Newman is providing support so that we can also keep track of when people on Zoom have questions for the room.
You did not hear that. Khandra, you just need to speak up.
Okay, is that better? So I can't move my head. Thank you. All right. The mic and my head are one. All right. All right, so Trang will offer some opening words for this meeting. Trang Duong, who is the chair of the Board Development Committee.
Thanks, Khandra. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? I'm pretty loud anyway. All right, good morning. Let's wake up. We are here for the business meeting. Just a few words about what we're here for today. Obviously, we're going to be discussing the business of the 2024 Assembly. So a few things, please have your devices ready. Even though this is a hybrid event for those in the Zoom room, virtually, and also those in the room, you will need your devices because we are using a system called Election Buddy. And some of us are familiar. At West, we use it for our elections. Maybe you've never used it before. It's pretty simple. So make sure that you have your device ready. It needs to not only be able to access email, but also a window browser, right? Because it's going to take you to a browser so that you can vote. If for most of you, you will have gotten yesterday, we sent out test ballots on Friday. Yesterday, we sent out the ballots for the officer elections that went out early. If you're eligible for that, you should have gotten it. So if you didn't get it, which we've gotten a few emails, please make sure you're using the right email that you gave us, right, on the delegate designation form. And secondly, that you're checking your spam or junk inbox, because sometimes they don't like, Election Buddy. It will say American Ethical Union, vote now on the ballots. However, it's not coming from the AEU, it's coming from Election Buddy. Okay? And be sure, as we go through and talk through the business and junk voting. Was that a question? Okay, all right. As we go through, the folks, Khandra and folks will kind of walk you through it. But just understand, certainly for the bylaws amendments, we do need to meet a certain threshold, which I believe is 51%. So please make sure you vote, okay? But understand that the voting will open up during this business meeting, and it's not open yet for the general voting. I mentioned the officers' election ballot already went out, but once you get it, you actually don't have to vote right away. We want to accommodate and help people who are having technical issues or questions. You will have until midnight tonight to submit your ballot, okay? For both the officers' election and then for the bylaws amendments today. Please, if you need any support, we are here for you. You can email us, assemblysupport@aeu.org or assembly2024@aeu.org. So we are here for you. So let us know. But first, make sure you're checking your junk and spam inboxes first, please. Okay? Because we do not close the voting at the end of the business meeting, we close at the tonight, the end of today. We will know right away. We will be issuing a report. And we may need to check on certain thresholds and making sure we're complying with the bylaws. As you well know, last year that happened too. So please give us a little bit of time, but we will tell you as we can. And I see a hand in the back. Is that you, Dorothy? Okay. What's your question, please?
Yes. So I'm going to just do it over the mic so that everybody can hear in case you need connectivity. The network is all caps FUS net, N-E-T, and the password is 900 lowercase m as in Mary, T as in Tom, curve, CURVE, which you just remember it's the address for this building. So FUSnet 900 Mount Curve, MT Curve.
Thank you. Was there another hand I saw? Okay. Thank you, thank you for your patience, especially on Zoom. We'll have some Zoom issues from the Zoom room as well as some in-person stuff. So we really appreciate your grace and patience as we figure things out, sometimes as we go along. All right. I think that's all for me for the opening words. Thank you so much for your attention and being here and for your engagement. And I'm going to pass it back to Khandra.
So I will keep this brief since we started late, but just want us all in the moment to reflect on this past weekend. It has been really great to see so many of you in person and all of the attendees who joined via Zoom. I think this assembly has given us much to think about as an organization, and we intend and plan to have discussions around operationalizing some of what we have heard this weekend to the extent that we have the capacity to do that. But I just want people to know that they have been heard, and this is not, the conversations that have been started this weekend will continue. And so I'll leave it there and now invite Carolyn Parker of the National Ethical Service to give their report.
Is it on? We're good. Okay. Thank you, Khandra. My name is Carolyn Parker. I am up here, Secretary of the National Ethical Service. More? Okay. We are one. I'm representing the National Ethical Service, which is an affiliate organization of the American Ethical Union. I'm here today to act on behalf of Dr. Nori Rost, who is president of the National Ethical Service, and Dr. Kurt Johnson, who is vice president of the National Ethical Service, both of whom cannot be here today. So I have been asked to, in their stead, chair this meeting, convene the annual meeting of the National Ethical Service. As a point of information, this meeting is a requirement for the National Ethical Service's continued role as an NGO, a non-governmental organization affiliated with the United Nations Department of Global Communication. And since every member of the AEU is also a member of the NES, I now call the 2024 annual meeting of the NES to order. Our sole item of business is to pass a motion to approve the joint NES AEU activities in the past year since the 2023 assembly. Our report on our activities was placed in the packet for the delegates to assembly on June 26. I hope you've had a chance to read it. Now I call for a motion to approve the work of the NES, an affiliate of the AEU, on the past 12 months. Is there a motion? There's a motion from Richard Coral. Is there a second? Second from Liz Singer. And we're going to pass this by consensus, if you don't mind. I hope this worked, because they've only given me 5 minutes. So is there any objection to adopting the motion to approve the work of the National Ethical Service in conjunction with the American Ethical Union over the past 12 months? Is there any objection on Zoom? Anybody objecting? Then the motion passes by consensus. Thank you very much. I'll just make one or two brief announcements. The NES Executive Committee is very happy now to welcome Audrey Kindred of the New York Society for Ethical Culture to its membership. And
We're not hearing anything.
You're not hearing what?
Nope.
I moved my head. Sorry. Audrey, the executive committee was welcoming Audrey Kendry to membership of the NES Executive Committee from NYSEC. I think. Sorry, I said that sentence better when you couldn't hear it, but it works. Okay, finally, on September 19th, the National Ethical Service is sponsoring Pathways to Peace, which is an event, an international event preceding the UN Summit of the Future, held in September 20th to 23rd in New York. And a reminder that September 21st is the International Day of Peace. In anticipation of that day, I wish you all peace and goodwill and adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carolyn.
You have to reopen the AEU meeting. You have to verbally reopen it. You
Oh,
stand
yes,
now.
sorry. I was going to check the Zoom people. Okay. So I'd like to reopen the AEU business Assembly business meeting and just confirm for folks on Zoom to check your settings. The sound in the room is working, so you should be able to hear us. All right, and I forgot at the top of the meeting to let you know and introduce the parliamentarian, Mr. Stephen Anderson, who is joining us via Zoom. Mr. Anderson was also the parliamentarian at the 100th meeting. Yes, sorry. So just to let you know that we have engaged a parliamentarian who did provide some information or opinions on all of the bylaws amendments, and those are also in the delegate packet. I will now explain how we're going to discuss the business today and the voting process, and went through how you're going to use Election Buddy pretty well. So the approved assembly discussion and voting procedures are also in your packet as a reference in case you need them. And so just to summarize, so as you know, voting will open this morning, but you will have until midnight to fill out your ballots and submit them. And we will obviously be on site if you have any questions. And so I would say take advantage, for those of you in person, certainly take advantage of the in-person support while we are here to handle any access issues. For discussion of the items, I will request that a motion be made to adopt the next item on the agenda, and then invite the author or responsible party to introduce the measure. Remote participants will also raise a hand to indicate if you are making a motion or seconding a motion. So I will also ask all of us in the room to be mindful that we do have Zoom participants, and so there may be pauses as we, try to recognize if somebody on Zoom does want to is participating in the meeting. And please use the Zoom function. We do have people monitoring, but it's most helpful in helping with stacking to raise your hand in Zoom. So changes to any amendments that were accepted by the authors, you should be seeing the final versions of the documents in your packet. I will invite the makers of those proposals to just give a brief overview of what changes were accepted, any changes they made in the final versions, but you also have those in your packet. Discussion will then be held, and we will have alternating speakers for and against. So you'll have an opportunity to stack yourselves, those in person and again on Zoom. And you will have a 90-second time limit per speaker to make your argument for or against a particular motion. And the agenda does say we were allowing, so the ballots will be open, but we realized late last night that for these amendments, the societies need to be, there's a certain threshold for voting that needs to pass by society votes. So we're splitting it into two ballots, identical ballots. If you are the primary delegate, you will get the ballot for your society's vote separately, and then an additional identical ballot for any other additional delegate votes, right? So they look the same, but one will track society votes and the other will track votes for all other delegates. Do I need to clarify that further? All right. What else?
What?
Is there a question on Zoom? Okay. So, yep, so that said, at most you will receive or have access to an additional 2 ballots for this meeting. And the officer's ballot will be an additional ballot that is already open, right? So 1 ballot for lead delegates for your society and another ballot for all other delegates. And I think that covers our procedures. Are there any questions? Alrighty. So next up, we just want to confirm that we do have a quorum of delegates.
Yes, we have achieved quorum.
Thank you. Right. Next up, we have the adoption of the agenda. So you should all have the draft agenda in your packets. Are there any objections to moving forward with this agenda? A show of hands. All right, so if you're in favor of moving forward with this agenda, please signify by raising your hands. All right, so the first or the next item of business is the approval of Assembly 2023 minutes, the 108th Assembly. Oh, did you want to? Okay. Okay. So is there a motion to approve the Assembly 2023 minutes as submitted?
Motion?
Is there a second? All those in favor of approving the Assembly 2023 minutes, please raise your hands. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. All right, next up.
Are you getting what you need with regard to votes? Okay, so. Yeah, we may need to have.
Okay, for folks on Zoom, could you indicate again whether or not you approve of the Assembly 2023 minutes?
got some folks visibly raising hands and not using the Zoom raise hand feature, so you just would have to scan.
Okay, can you lower your hands on Zoom, please? Any opposed to approving the 2023 minutes? Any abstentions?
One on Zoom.
Okay, thank you. And lower your hands on Zoom. All right, the next item on the agenda is the election of officers. And so is there a motion to elect the officers as nominated by the Board Development Committee? Is there a second? And so you have the ballot. So we'll move on to the next item. Yep. Okay. Next up, we have discussion and approval of the 2024-2025 budget. Is there a motion to approve the FY25 budget as recommended by the Finance Committee? I think we have to get a motion on the board. Yep. Thank you. So is there a motion to approve the FY25 budget as recommended by the Finance Committee? Is there a second? Is there any discussion? If folks want to, yes, it is in the delegate packet. So please raise your hands either in the room or via Zoom if you would like to, if you have a question or comment about the budget so we can start stacking you. Tom, and then Randy seconded. Are there any questions in the room? Okay, so there are 2 hands on Zoom for questions. Oh, okay. No questions? So the ballot for you to vote on approving the FY25 budget will be live shortly. All right, now we move on to the amendments to the bylaws. So first up is, and so just to reiterate what will happen, we will discuss all of the amendments, explain what you should expect to see on your ballot, and then you'll have time at the end, once we close, end the meeting, close discussion, to vote on the ballots, right? So the first amendment on the agenda to be discussed is a correction to Article 4, Elected Officers, Section 1, Part B, the nomination process, board composition, and nomination. So is there a motion to adopt the bylaws amendment proposed by the Board Development Committee? And we have a second. And now, is there any discussion? And I will turn it over to trying to give some explanation.
Okay to move forward? Okay. Yeah, so again, I'm Trang Duong. I'm the chair of the Board Development Committee of the AEU. And this bylaw amendment came about because there was inconsistencies in the bylaws. You know, it was written as, I don't have it in front of me, of course. You know, the word 30 was written out and then 50 was in parentheses or vice versa. So it was just inconsistent. So we submitted that it needed to be changed. And then we got a friendly amendment to our amendment from Carolyn Parker, asking that we change the wording. I guess I should pull it up. I'm sorry. Let me just pull it up. So that oh gosh. Thank you. So that we would change it so instead of write-in nominations would be submitted to the BDC no more than 7 days prior to the publication of the candidate slate, that we're changing it to 7 days after the publication of the candidate slate. And so that made a lot of sense, just to allow time for folks, once the slate came out, was released, that write-in candidates could submit their interest to the BDC specifically. So this was submitted as a bylaws amendment. Upon review, however, by the parliamentarian, Mr. Anderson, it was determined that the first part, the BDC part about correcting the numbers, you'll see from 50 to 30 and 5 to 3, that actually does not need to be a bylaws amendment this year. So, so what you're voting on today and in the ballot that you'll get, if you agree with this amendment, specifically the part that changes the 7 days from before the publication of the slate to 7 days after the publication of the slate, that's what you'll be voting on today. We don't need to vote on the actual, the basically, you know, typos. So just for that clarification, does that make sense, folks in the room? Yes, Richard, and people on Zoom, please queue up as well while we're addressing Richard's question. I'll repeat. Oh, okay.
Does this mean, yeah, because the folks on Zoom need to hear
Yeah. Hold on for a minute. We're getting the mic to someone in the room.
Thank you. Does this mean that it's not necessary for the typographical error to be corrected? That we, I see the problem that you have. Does this mean that we don't need a vote on this, but that the typographical error can still be made? Last year, I
Yes.
note that the actual substantive change was made.
Yes.
And this is just a reflection of it.
Yes.
So as long as it's going to be clarified as a typographical error, then that's fine.
Okay. Okay. Yes. Yes. So thank you, Richard. Hopefully the people in the Zoom room heard. I'm not even sure. Someone says to move the mic away from from my mouth. So.
That was just for you to all the keys are popping.
All right, I'm just loud. Okay, and there's a question from Barbara, what is the rationale for this again? So at last year's assembly, the 2023 assembly, this bylaw amendment proposed by the Bergen Society was approved. And in that, it lowered the threshold for write-in candidates, okay, from requiring 50 signatures from at least 5 different societies, and it lowered it down to 30 signatures from at least 3 different societies, okay? However, it was not reflected in the bylaws, the most recent bylaws dated July of 2023. So the BDC proposed, hey, we need to change this bylaws to reflect this change. However, upon review by parliamentarian, hey, the bylaws amendments passed last year. We actually don't need yet another one. So that's why we're slightly correcting that. So regardless, that change is there. It's in the bylaws, okay? We just need to reflect that kind of typo actually in the document, but the substantive part of this amendment is Carolyn Parker's amendment itself that just changes that 7 days notification to the Board Development Committee of someone's interest to be a write-in candidate as a board officer, from 7 days prior to the publication of the candidate slate to 7 days afterwards. So I hope that makes sense, and I'm told the volume is better. And I will just, I'm looking at Carol right now. Is that an accurate reflection? Do you want to add anything, Carol? Okay, so I'm just going to ask Carolyn if she has anything to add, since it's her friendly amendment.
Bless your heart. The rationale, I think, was the part of
Closer, please.
the rationale was part of the question, and this is meant to facilitate competition on elections. If we have one candidate for an office and no other nominees, it's not exactly a choice. So this just says there is a choice, and this also gives time to effect such a choice without a clear deadline of when to do whatever, this relationship kind of thing. It just gives, it's a very short period of time to step up if that's what your choice is, but it does increase the opportunity for participation.
Thank you. That was very helpful. And the Board Development Committee, on consideration of this friendly amendment by Carolyn, thought it made a lot of sense to allow for that 7 days after the publication so people knew who was going to be on the slate before, adding another candidate or a write-in candidate. I see a question in the room. Go ahead, Scott. Joe, back there.
Hi, Scott Wright, St. Louis. I just wanted to clarify, I don't know if this is a dumb question or not, but there's no, if someone wants to run and collect signatures, they don't have to wait for the slate to be announced. They can collect signatures at any point, so there's no dependency here on the slate. I just want to confirm that. So if someone wants to run, they can start the process really at any point. They just have a deadline of 7 days after the slate.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
And we invite folks to run for these elections, for sure. All right. Any other questions in the Zoom room or in person? Okay, I'm going to turn it back. Thank you for your attention.
All right. So next up, we have a sunshine proposal to amend AEU bylaws. So the original motion is to adopt the sunshine proposal as an amendment to the AEU bylaws. Is there... Pardon? What did I say? Sorry. So the next up is actually the officer term limits. The motion is to adopt the bylaws amendment to Article 4, Section 3, proposed by the Mid-Atlantic East Region to change the officer term limits. Can somebody, is there a first for the motion? Okay, in a second. All right. Thank you.
You first it. Okay, thank you. I can second.
Can you tell we are tired? Is there any discussion? So if you, sorry, actually we should take a moment to hear just a little bit about the motion from Rhiannon. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So the purpose of this bylaw is to extend the term limit of the officers from 1 year to 2 years and to split them into 2 classes and alternate those classes so that every year you're only nominating and voting on 2 officers at a time. So this helps the BDC reduce their burden from finding 4 people every year to 2 people every year. It helps to preserve some institutional knowledge so you don't have the entire slate of officers switch every year. There was also an alignment to New York State law at the end of it. I'm going to pull that up real quick. So previously, the removal from office section said that any elected officer may be removed by the board of directors. That was changed to the assembly. Since the assembly is the one who votes in the officers, the assembly should be the only body that can remove the officers. There are other structural things in this section that I think, yes, we need a full-on overhaul, but at least this would align it to New York State nonprofit law. Any clarifying questions? Yes. Yeah.
Matthew Heil from St. Louis. So this means that an officer can only be removed every year or at an assembly. So if something happens in the interim, we are stuck with that officer for that interim?
Yeah, so you could call a special assembly at any time based off of a certain number threshold. It's in the bylaws. New York State law also allows the duties of the officer to be stripped by the board for cause, but for cause. That is not explicit in our bylaws, so I didn't want to get too in the weeds in the bylaws for that. So it's ambiguous, so we would default to New York State law if that was required.
All right. It doesn't make sense to me that you can't do, I mean, I agree with that part, but you're not saying that. You're
Right.
saying, well, no, maybe we would do that. So, okay.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
understand the intention.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So are there any speakers either for or against the motion? And can we have one for, or?
Should we stack who's going to be for?
Yeah, can we stack who's going to be for and who's going to be against? Or,
A quick question. Every version that I see on the agenda, the list, refers to removal by the board of directors. I'm not seeing one that says this. I looked at 3 versions.
sorry, where is that?
Yeah, so in the delegate packet, it's the 2024.07.20 that shows that it's assembly. I can link that and put it in the chat. I don't know if you're online.
Folks on Zoom, we are trying to get the amendment loaded on the screen for people in the room. So give us a couple minutes for that, please.
We have time to take
A clarification? Do you have a clarifying question?
Well, I just want to clarify that I'm looking at the right thing. So I'm scrolling all the way down till it won't go anymore, and I see, and I quote, removal from office, part D. Any elected officer may be removed from office for cause by a vote of 2/3 of the entire membership of the board of directors at any regular or special board meeting or recommendation of the mediation committee. And then it says notice of proposed removal shall be provided at least 30 days prior to such meeting. So I'm not seeing a reference to an assembly or special assembly in that statement.
Can you scroll all the way down? I don't know who's controlling the screen. All the way down. Yep. Yeah, so that's the wrong one. Yeah, so the link in the Zoom should be the correct one. Zoom chat. 2024.07.20. Nope. Nope. Yes. Either one will work. One is just track changes. All the way to the bottom. Yep. Yeah, so it says any elective officer may be removed from office for cause by vote of 2/3 of the entire membership of the assembly. On recommendation of the mediation committee, notice of such proposed removal shall be provided at least 30 days prior to such meeting. So it's just a switch from board of directors to assembly to align with the law. Lawrence, do you have a question?
Yes, and hopefully this will be brief. Since this affects the operations of the Board Development Committee, does anyone on the Board Development Committee have an opinion as to whether this would be useful to their work or not?
Thank you for the question. Who posed the question? Oh, Lawrence. Okay, thank you, Lawrence. This is Trang Duong. I'm with the Board Development Committee. I'm the chair. And yeah, the Board Development Committee is fine with this. We agree it would reduce the workload of the BDC. Also, it does make sense in that it allows for time for the officers just to, learn the position and, to learn their position, and because a year is a very short period of time, so we do support this amendment. I hope I answered your question, Lawrence.
Yes, thank you.
You had one in the room, or you back the question up. Sorry. There's a hand. Who's up next on Zoom? Susanna, go ahead.
Yes, quick question. When we vote for this about this amendment, are these like B, C, and D this at once or separate? Because you might agree with B and C, but not D.
I can answer that. So everything in this particular document is for one vote. So if you agree with the officer extension but not the removal change, for example, then you would vote no on this. If you agree with all of the changes, then you would say yes.
Okay, thank you.
And I will add, there's also an option to abstain on the ballot as well for all of the questions. There was a hand in the room. Matthew.
So if the vice president wants to run for president the next year, what happens?
Yeah, so they can leave their position, and so there's 1 year left on their term, at which point the board can fill that vacancy.
So they would be elected to a 2-year term as president?
If they are elected by the assembly, yeah.
So.
Yep.
Go ahead, Lee, on Zoom.
Yes, good morning. Lee Collins from the Baltimore Ethical Society. I've got a couple of comments about letter D. The statement, any elected officer may be removed from office for cause is fairly vague. What is cause? We assume that we know what that means until something comes up. The second is, would that be made public or would it be kept private? What the cause was and what the decision was made. So those are some comments I have about letter D.
I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know the exact definition of for cause, but it is legalese. And it is a fairly high bar of standard as I understand it. So, stealing money, like really, really egregious things. So it's a pretty high bar. And then the notification, it depends on what it is. Most likely there would be executive sessions that would be held private, but then any actions that come out of that likely will then be in the minutes for the next meeting.
Just to clarify, cause is also defined in the current bylaws. It's included. Did you? Oh, okay, sure. Well, yeah. So I guess right now we've been clarifying questions, and so if there are no more clarifying questions, we can move to statements either for or against the amendment. And we'll try and stack both. There's one. So just one second. Are there any more clarifying questions in person or on Zoom?
I just want, wow, you really have to get this one close. Whew. I just want to clarify that D is amending it to align with New York state law. So you can't, if you vote no because of D, if that's your choice not to vote for D, we have to change it anyway because we have to align with New York law. So the real change is the term limits. So understand that New York law requires the assembly to make the removal. So that's a correction, really.
Go ahead, John.
John Dakin, he, him, Washington. I just wanted to note that the legal opinion obtained by the board last year did not say that New York law requires that the assembly remove an officer. It simply says that only the body that elects an officer can remove them. And they actually pointed out some challenges to having such a large group do it. But if we do continue having the assembly elect them, only the assembly can remove them.
Alrighty. If there are no more clarifying questions, are there people who want to speak for or against the amendment? Any hands on Zoom? All right. So you will see that on the ballot. There will be an option to adopt the amendment or not to approve it, or to abstain from voting. So next up is definition of emergency. Okay. All right. Next up is the sunshine proposal. So a sunshine proposal to amend AEU bylaws. So is there a motion to adopt the sunshine? Oh, yeah. Is there a motion to adopt the sunshine proposal as an amendment to the AEU bylaws? And this was submitted by the Ethical Humanist Society of the Triangle. And Fred, do you want to just speak to the changes, any changes that were made to the final document? So all of the final documents should be dated 2024, 7, 19, or 20. So the dates are the latest versions.
If you see in the watermark of the document, the 3 blue people, it should be the right version.
And there are also tracked changes versions, so you can see what changes were made between the original and the final.
So the changes that were made from the original document that we had, partly in response to the parliamentarian review or the legal review, was to include some information about how this amendment actually fits into the existing bylaws. And so it fits in Article 3, Section 3 of the AEU bylaws. And that section has 2 parts, Part A and Part B currently. And we're adding a Part C called Open Meetings and Open Records. And some of the actual changes in the text of the document was to add a section in the preamble, which actually isn't going to be in the completed bylaw part. But that said, the additional administrative burden incurred, including notification of meetings and posting minutes, will be far outweighed by the benefits of assured transparency and will serve AEU well. The amendment is proposed for Article 3, Section 3 of the bylaws as described below. And then there were a few other minor changes to the document to reflect the same kind of language that's typically in the bylaws, with the lettering being small I's, I for 1, I for 2, I for 3, and A, B, and C stuff under that. Let's see, I think that was most of the substantive changes, and Carolyn Parker's amendment to it was essentially incorporated into this version, which was to format it in this particular way, so it looks like the rest of the bylaws. A few minor changes in sentences. Minutes will be excluded. Minutes of all official documents will include the date, time, folks in attendance, minutes of the meeting, documents discussed, and reasons the meeting was held. So it's just, the notes that come from the meeting, essentially. And those are the changes. When it comes time, I'll possibly speak in favor of the document.
Right. Are there any clarifying questions? And if you have any clarifying questions on Zoom, please go ahead and raise your hand using the raise hand function.
So I'm sorry, I'm still really confused about what we're talking about, which one of these we're talking about. This is, we've got 3 documents at least with the dates 7/19 dealing with the sunshine proposal. So are we talking about the final? Are we talking about the amendment, version 2? Are we talking about the EHST? Are we talking about which one of these is being proposed?
So Matthew, you're right. There are 3 documents in there that are start with the date of July 19th.
Mm-hmm.
There is the proposal submitted final. That is the final submitted proposal without changes tracked. The next file that says changes tracked is that same file except with changes.
Okay.
The one above that, the very top one, amendment to sunshine proposal, is the proposal that takes sunshine protocols, and rather than asking to make it a bylaw, it is being made a policy instead to be implemented by the AEU Board of Directors. Does that clarify?
So do we get to vote on that?
Yeah, so
Okay.
give it to Khandra.
So let me get back to the right document. So the Mid-Atlantic region offered that as in response to the bylaw amendment and there's some added language. But first we need to adopt or make that motion, right? Have that, and it's been moved and seconded. We'll have discussion and then we'll move on to the policy to move and second that and have discussion. But they will both be on the ballot. And this one will be a ranked choice, so you have the option to approve it as an amendment, or approve it as a policy, abstain, and if you, yes, did I miss? Right, not ranking something as a vote against it. Sorry, yeah, you will rank the choices, sorry, not like approve, disapprove, you will rank them. And so are there any more clarifying questions for, sorry, so you will rank them, the options to rank would be as an amendment, as a policy, or abstain, or no vote. And not ranking something would be a vote against it.
Is that clear to everyone?
Are there any clarifying questions on Zoom? All right. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, hi. Let's say there's a meeting to go ahead and perform a staff evaluation or support a staff evaluation for AEU staff. Would this require that? Okay. Would a meeting that's a staff evaluation also need to be open as well, or is that confidential?
So did everybody on Zoom hear the question that, yes. Fred, sorry.
So there are exclusions to the bylaw proposal. It's part II under paragraph C. It says exclusions to the official meetings definition in paragraph 1 are defined here. And it basically says legal matters specifically exempted from disclosure are excluded, prohibited by law, court orders, those kinds of things. Matters related to confidential investigations of law enforcement. And then to more directly address your question, matters that disclose information of a personal nature, including personal finances, medical information, private, personally identifiable information, etc., where disclosure would constitute a clearly unwarranted invasion of personal privacy, those are excluded.
Okay, so let's say you had a staff evaluation where none of that private information is disclosed. Would that meeting, need to be open?
If it relates to, your personal activities, if it's an evaluation like that, I would consider that personal, private information that doesn't need to be disclosed. But these, there's no way to precisely define every detail in a amendment or a law. We'll do the best we can, but hopefully things that make sense will prevail.
So I will add, we have discussed, and it has been requested that we perform a staff evaluation. And part of that process would be include soliciting board members to manage that process, but also to respond to that process, right? To get feedback on how staff, the work that they're doing for the organization. So that is, I appreciate the question because that is something on the horizon. And then Rich.
Rich Wash, he, him. Are we being asked for the Sunshine proposal, to choose between whether this is a bylaws amendment or a policy? And could someone speak to why it should be one way versus another? I need help in that.
Sorry, we need to discuss for and against for the amendment first, and then we'll get to the option for adopting it as a policy. So the discussion will be had, yes, but in a matter of like order of operations.
Okay.
And rejecting all of it is an option as well, right? Dorothy?
I'm not sure now that procedurally I should be addressing. I was going to address Rich's question, but if you're going to do the bylaw amendment one by one.
No, so you want to speak for it?
Yeah.
Okay, so that would be, that's what we're going to do now. I would just want to ensure there are no more clarifying questions, and then we'll stack people to speak for and against it for adopting it as an amendment. Does that make sense? Okay, so are there any clarifying questions from Zoom?
The question on Zoom is just what is the relevance to do this change, but I think that can be answered when you describe it in bylaw.
Yeah. Okay, so now, are there, I guess, show of hands of who would like to speak for the amendment? Do you? No, speaking for it, in favor of versus against. Okay, so we have 3 in the room, Fred, Dorothy, and Carolyn. Is there anybody who would like to speak against the amendment? 1, 2. Alrighty. Okay. Lawrence, okay. Not that I saw. So we'll go for, against, okay? So Fred? Oh, sorry. I mean, we could handle it that way. Do people think it would be less confusing that way? Because now we have a motion on the floor, right? And thank you for the reminder that we do have. No, don't be. Just give us a moment to message him.
So let me just be clear. The So the question being asked is that there is a motion for the current amendment to the AEU bylaws. And Carolyn, your question is whether we are also including the amendment to that amendment, or if we're doing it separately?
The amendment to the amendment eliminates the amendment. And if you have a motion to amend the amendment, I would rise to a point of order. And I'm just
So you're,
trying to figure out what's going on.
so just, I'm going to rephrase this. So Carolyn, you are saying, so there are two primary pieces here. One is treating sunshine protocols as bylaws. One is treating sunshine protocols as policy. And you are asking to raise a point of order in regard to the policy, if that is going to come on the ballot in the vote. Okay. That if there is an amendment to amend the bylaws proposal to make it a policy, that you are raising a point of order. So if the point of order prevails regarding the policy, then the policy may not be on the ballot. Okay. So, and then I see Dorothy.
Yeah, so my society is the one that proposed this. And my concern is that the amendment to make it a policy changes it significantly. And I doubt, being human nature, that everyone's looked at it really thoroughly to see that. But the key difference is the bylaws amendment is talking about any meetings where official business is conducted. And in my view, that includes meetings of the officers. It doesn't have to be really formal, but what, you know, recording the operations, because, you know, to be really frank and short about this, a previous board voted not to have an executive committee, but the officers are acting as an executive committee, in my view. And by the way, I applaud them for all the work they have done this year, including Anya, who I think was a great secretary for the board. So I want to make sure to say that. But the bylaw amendment that says let's make it a policy strips that out, and it is strictly open board meeting. And that's a concern to me. I probably could go with the policy idea personally. I'm not speaking for my society. Personally, I think I could go for the policy idea if there was some sense that officer meetings where business is conducted are fed back in some way, and there is some sunshine to that. So that, I think, is why I think that's what started this whole suggestion, and I want to just make that point, that the policy versus the bylaw, they don't match.
So I'm going to bring us back, as you've moved into the discussion phase, and we did have a 90-second clock. So, and there was a question to be relayed to the parliamentarian. So hold on.
So I messaged the parliamentarian with the point of order question, and the parliamentarian replied that the assembly can either put the content into the bylaws or direct the board to create a policy. So it can be an either or. So can we give the microphone to Carolyn so she can say her own point of order? And parliamentarian, if you could hear Carolyn's question to maybe respond to, because I might not be fully understanding the point of order.
Okay. Up here, microphone, yes. Madam President, I rise to a point of order to say that the amendment to the amendment that is being proposed, I'm getting very close to this thing, is in essence a resolution. It specifically states that it is not intended to amend the bylaws. And even though there may be additional comments to be offered later about the actual content of the amendment to the amendment, I would say that it was not filed timely. The deadline was earlier, and it was not given to delegates on June 26th to look at it. So it looks like, sorry, I'm garbling it now because this microphone's in my nose, but it was not filed on time. It looks like a resolution. I think it is improper at this time in this forum.
It was filed on time. Like that.
July 20th is too late. It had to be filed in time to give to the delegates on June 30th, June 26th, 30 days in advance.
But offer anything to amend current proposals, that was the deadline set.
But this does not amend the proposal. This overturns this. This is not an amendment to a bylaw amendment to make it a change to the bylaws, is to say, let us not amend the bylaws. It's simply a resolution in opposition to an amendment to the bylaws, structurally.
Okay.
So if the parliamentarian has heard Carolyn Parker's from Austin point of order, if you could speak to that point of order, and I'll just leave that there for now. And it looks like the parliamentarian is unmuted, so hopefully he's speaking.
Reclassifying the proposal as a resolution does put it under a different timeline.
Puts it under a different timeline?
As I understand it, the deadline for proposals for resolutions was earlier than the bylaws amendments.
But what determines its classification as a resolution?
The assembly or the ruling by the chair.
Sorry, could you repeat that? I didn't catch.
The amendment was filed, apparently intended by the maker as a bylaw or a redirection of a bylaws amendment proposal. However, the point is valid that directing the board to create a policy is not the same as amending the bylaws. The assembly has the authority to order the board to do something, but that is not a bylaws amendment. That would be a resolution, and so would be classified differently. If the assembly agrees with the point of order that this is a resolution and not properly classified, then it would be taken off the ballot. However, the assembly can vote to leave it on the ballot. That's their privilege.
If I'm understanding correctly, in response to Carolyn Parker's point of order, somebody may call for the assembly to vote to leave that on the ballot. Otherwise, it may get reclassified as a resolution and not an amendment, which puts it on a different timeline, which would mean that it would not be on the ballot.
Essentially, that's correct.
Oh, perfect. Great. Okay, so I see Carolyn nodding her head. The parliamentarian has confirmed. I see Emily has her hand up. I see Lawrence has a hand up. So I'm going to hand it back to Khandra.
Emily?
So now I'm a little confused now because my understanding of resolution is more of a public, external, like a statement on the issues that we take a stand on and not the way that our organization functions. So I'd love to know how we're defining resolution.
And then while we're getting a response to that, I think the next question goes to Lawrence on Zoom.
Hi, Larry Dorison from St. Louis, him. I'm opposed to this. 6 months ago, I had never heard of the AEU, and since then have been involved in a project to review and evaluate what's going on here. And I was astonished from reading the bylaws and listening to the Sunshine Amendment, the level of mistrust that the membership appears to have with each other and with their board and officers, and the level of extra effort required to seemingly overcome the lack of trust. And I would prefer to think that with a new slate of officers and a new board, we could enter into the spirit that people will be doing their jobs properly, making decisions properly, reporting them to their superiors, to the officers who will report to the board, who will share the information with us, so we can go forward as a humanist organization, an ethical organization, and perform the kind of work that we want to perform. And I was unaware of the past issues that have arisen, and still unaware of the details of why people may be mistrustful. So it really is a question of how mistrustful are we, and should that mistrust continue? Thank you.
What I just, Emily, in response to your question, and please, with folks who know the bylaws better than I do, if you could speak up, but in section 10 of Article 2, Assembly, all it says under resolutions is that in voting on matters of public issue, a 2/3 majority of the votes cast at an assembly at which a quorum is present is required for passage. So I don't know that resolution itself is defined except implicitly by calling it a matter of public issue.
All right, so we were not timing people before, and I would like us to get on track, keep on time, and be equitable in how we allow people to speak. So just FYI, we're starting a clock.
Can we clarify who has already spoken, or will we start?
So Dorothy has spoken, Lawrence has spoken. Next up would be Fred, I think. So do you have like a clarification, or are you joining the staff? John Dakin. I'm sorry. Oh.
I think Emily raised a good point about the word resolution, but I think there's also a section called Acts of the Assembly, and it seems like that might be more properly considered for the parliamentarians' benefit, an act of the Assembly.
And I'll just clarify that that is section 10(9), the preceding section, where it says, except as otherwise provided by statute, by the certification of incorporation, or by these bylaws, any action approved by a majority of the votes cast at an assembly at which a quorum is present shall be the act of the assembly.
Thank you. So Fred? Yes.
I'll speak for the motion, but I think that there's, instead of just speaking for the motion, I've got to address some of the issues on voting now that have arisen. Are we going to be having ranked choice voting with a resolution versus a bylaws amendment? Thank you, because I think it should be a vote for or against the resolution, or I'm sorry, the bylaws amendment. So to speak for the bylaws amendment, to speak for the bylaws amendment, I think we have to lead with our values. If the officers are going to set up a meeting, they're going to send an email to folks. They're going to take notes during the meeting. So I don't see the tremendous administrative overburden of sharing those with others. And letting folks know. I mean, you're going to tell people we're going to have a meeting at this time and date. Why not have that email be more public? Finally, let's codify these rules in a way that allows everyone that wants to have an opportunity to see what's going on. And I think if we
so that's the 90-second mark. Thank you.
If we,
so that's the 90-second mark. So we'll move to the next, the person.
Thank you.
Madam President, Madam President, the parliamentarian will follow up.
Sorry.
This is the parliamentarian with a clarification on my earlier statement.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
the point of order needs to be ruled on before any further discussion on the pending proposals takes place. So the chair needs to rule whether the point is well taken or not. If the chair is uncertain, she can offer it to the assembly to rule by majority vote whether the two different varieties of sunshine proposal can be considered on the same ballot.
So just in terms of process, should be also, so we are voting electronically. Would that be a vote that we take, we take it to the assembly, a vote by hand in person?
You would, the vote on the point of order would need to be a real-time vote, and based on the result,
Thank you for that clarification.
I assume the already issued ballot might have to be revised.
All right, thank you. So can everybody hear me okay? Good. So to resolve the point of order, we're going to vote. A yes vote is to remove the policy, the sunshine policy, as a ranked choice on the ballot. A no vote would preserve the ballot as is with choice of amendment and policy as ranked choice votes. Is that clear? And we will be voting by hand.
Get rid of the policy of yes vote.
Yes. Yes, a yes removes the policy as a ranked choice on the ballot. A no would preserve the ballot with a choice of amendment and policy as ranked choice votes. Not at this time.
Another time. Another time. Another time.
Yeah, the board can pass policy.
Yes. No.
Get the mic.
So yeah, sorry. Yeah, wait for the microphone.
So if we're voting yes, we're taking it off the ballot.
We're taking the option as a policy, off of the
but
ballot.
the amendment remains.
The amendment remains, and you can vote. You would then vote yes or no on the amendment.
Correct.
Okay. Oh yes. Right. So we are voting by hand in person on Zoom. Raise your hand if you are voting yes to remove the sunshine policy as a ranked choice vote on the ballot. So a yes vote to resolve the point of order would be to remove the policy as a ranked choice vote on the ballot. It would leave the amendment on the ballot as a bylaw amendment, sorry. Just. And just let me know when you.
Yep,
Yeah.
I'm doing Zoom now.
She's about to. Yeah.
Well, I also need to make sure if anyone has their physical hand. Someone has a check mark? See the check mark, please? Check mark. Oh. Yeah, it would be helpful if everyone just uses the hand. Yeah, okay. So.
And if you vote no, that would preserve the ballot with the choice of amendment and policy as ranked choice votes on the ballot. So raise your hands now. Oh, sorry. Sorry, lower your hands. Lower your hands. Please lower your hands on Zoom. I think we can lower their hands for them. Yeah. All right. Okay. So if you want to vote no, which would preserve the ballot with the choice of amendment and policy, raise your hands now.
And then, okay. And do we ask for
Oh,
abstentions?
sorry. Are there any abstentions? Oh, sorry. Sorry. Can the folks on Zoom lower your hands, please? Thank you. And are there any abstentions? Oh, so sorry. What's Sally?
So do we need 50% of the vote to pass, or do we need the majority of?
Oh, we're kind of talking up here.
Yeah, I'm asking.
Oh, do we need a majority?
A majority,
50%
or more
mm-hmm.
of the existing audience.
Of the existing, yeah.
Of the people who voted, well, okay.
Yeah.
36 is our quorum number, but, so 31 people said yes, 19 said no, and 3 abstained.
Okay. So the policy will be removed as a choice from the ballot. So is that clear? And that resolves the point of order. That can be done. Oh, yes. Okay. So you would have received a ballot already. We scheduled it to go out. So the ballot will be disabled and a new ballot will be issued with that revised portion. All right. So now we will return to restacking arguments for and against for the amendment. So we stopped with Fred, I think.
Yeah, redo.
So reset. Okay. So raise your hands if you would like to, and we'll be clear. There's a 90-second clock on speaking, right? So we do want to trying to finish the meeting on time and get all points across. So for and against. So raise your hands for for so we can stack you. Fred, Carolyn, all right. And then on Zoom, against. Or sorry, on Zoom, is there anyone for? No. And for against, raise your hands to 1, 2, 3. All right. Thank you. So what was the order? Four. Okay, thank you. All right. All right.
Zoom is doing.
All right. Fred, you can speak for. Oh, sorry, Carolyn.
Madam President, thank you for hearing. In my nose again, sorry. Thank you very much for allowing us to continue this discussion this way. This proposal, the Sunshine Proposal, is very clear in its orientation. It's the same as the Sunshine Laws that we ask for from our government. It's part of democracy that we have open meetings and open records. It's not a statement of mistrust as much as it is a statement of let's do it properly now, let's work together, let's collaborate, and let's be open in sending information, making information available to all of our members so that people don't say, what is the AEU doing? Now we know. So it's a positive, proactive step forward for democracy.
Rihanna?
Okay. So Rhiannon Johnson, Westchester. I'm in agreement that open and radical transparency can help alleviate some anxieties that exist in our current system. However, we should be careful about adding things to our bylaws as a reaction. So my initial next point was that the policy as written that Mid-Atlantic and East was proposing, while it did strike out the word officer, they are considered board members, so they were still included in the language. If you're looking for transparency from the AU, you have to expect the transparency from everyone, and what this will require is transparency from everyone. The board, the officers, the committees, your retreats, your regional meetings, your all-region meetings. So that's why it's a large burden. Now you're expecting all of the committee chairs to do something that is going to be a challenge to get everyone to be in compliance with. Now you're going to not be in compliance with bylaws. It's a risky slope there. So if I think that the definition of emergency bylaw addresses a lot of the concern about the action specifically around officers. So I think that we have an option that fixes some of those concerns. If a bylaws amendment is really warranted, I would recommend to keep it simple, such as the AU will ensure open meetings and open records. Then a policy will dictate what types of meetings, what types of actions, and the records that are sustainable and relevant to our union. Thank you.
So next up we have Fred. Okay, Solomon.
Thank you. This is my first time here, so bear with me. I'm only beginning to understand whatever is supposed to be going on. However, what I've heard over the last couple of days is that there's been a problem of transparency that was discussed yesterday at some length with what has been going on. What I seem to hear is that rather than making this a bylaw to make it a policy, is to leave some sort of flexibility as far as something administrative. And I'm not sure exactly that that's exactly a good reason, because what I'm hearing is that you want the ability to sometimes not be transparent because it's just a little more, it might be a little more difficult. And I'm not sure how that kind of tracks if a lot of the information you want your members to have, you're saying you're already giving it out. It seems to me that having a bylaw simply means that if you people don't happen to be the board, that a consistency has to be carried through year after year after year after year after year, board after board after board after board, that you only have to visit this once. And your membership no longer has to argue about who is a little more flexible sometimes than who is holding strictly to the policy. Policies are not.
All right, next up in the stack, we have Greg. Oh. Spider-Man.
Hi, folks. My name is Greg Bonin. In case there's any confusion, I'm the Director of Organizational Culture and Administration for the AEU as staff, but I am also an ethical culture leader.
Not hearing you.
Hello.
Yay.
Okay, I'm going to start my who I am over. So I am the Director of Organizational Culture and Administration, which means I'm staff for the American Ethical Union. I am also an ethical culture leader certified by the union board earlier this year, which is how I am a delegate and get a vote here at the assembly. So just to clarify that, because I know there were some questions about that. So if you want to start my timer, if I just want to refer to my 6-month report. The union is critically strained. We do not have the same number of people that we had when the expectations were set for the systems that we have now in place. Despite this, the officers have implemented many of the protocols already named in the policy, and bylaw amendment, demonstrating that they take transparency and accountability seriously. These are hard decisions. If we do one thing, sometimes it means we cannot do another thing. And I've seen the officers and staff solicit the board for feedback and try to engage the board representatives in participating in our own governance with very mixed results. We're still living into these new structures, have not yet released the expectations of our legacy structures, and this transition is going to take time. I absolutely agree there's an ongoing need for greater transparency, accountability, and accessibility. I do not believe that this bylaws proposal actually addresses the underlying causes of mistrust and anxiety. This bylaw is asking for assurance, but doesn't actually provide that assurance. And I did hear mistrust, even in Solomon, what you were saying, that we're asking for permission not to be transparent. That is a symptom of mistrust. So I suggest that the board's energy is better spent on addressing the underlying issues by continuing the work they're already doing, and also that they gain the support of the assembly and board. And so please vote no.
So next up, speaking for the amendment, we have Fred.
Thank you. So the text of the amendment says, it defines official meetings, and this only addresses official meetings. It defines official meetings as referring to deliberations that determine a result in the joint conduct or disposition of official AEU policy or business. So regardless of trust or mistrust, I sometimes like to know what's going on. And I can't always do that. I've sat in on board meetings, but the board packet is securely linked so that only board members can see it. I've sat in on other meetings, and I'm there as an observer, but why do we have these rules? I don't think it's constructive to have that kind of a policy. And joint conduct or disposition means things that involve, the business transactions of our society, hiring people, making rules about what we should or shouldn't do. That's what our board is there to do. I just want everybody to know what's going on. That's the main reason why I urge you to vote yes on this amendment. And I'll stop there because I think I'm about to be sung to by Burt Bacharach or somebody.
Thank you. And then last in the stack.
Hello? Is this the way it works? Oh, point of order? Why's your hand up, John?
Somebody else wants to speak against, and we want to keep the number even.
It's on? Okay. My name is Jackie Sims. I am a member of the Ethical Humanist Society of Asheville. Actually, I'm a co-founder of the Ethical Humanist Society of Asheville in 2001. My daughter grew up attending the St. Louis Society, first through 12th grade, and I think it's the best thing I ever did for her. I love ethical culture. I love being in the mind. I need that because I'm an emotional person. I need to get away from my emotions sometimes. I, however, stepped upstairs for a while and saw the platform meeting that's being held. Jay and another woman from some other congregation were talking about feeding the homeless, the people who cannot afford to feed themselves, and how important it was that one of the eaters there was that church, I don't remember the name of it, had decided not to do pass out. They've been doing pass out. They decided to move to sit down meals. And they, one woman commented, "Oh, China plate, now I feel human." And I thought, yeah, feeling is important. Feeling is important. I have worked with an organization called Building Bridges of Asheville for 30 years, almost 31 years.
Jackie was speaking against, yes.
Is there anyone else who wants to speak against? Yep. Are we okay? So John Dakin, Joe.
John Dakin, he, him, Washington. Is this on? I feel torn, and I appreciate Rhiannon's comments very much and Greg's. But I appreciate also what Fred had to say, and I think if everyone is big-hearted in terms of how we interpret this, I wanted to speak about the idea of committees having to be transparent. I speak as the former chair of the membership committee, and we have 4 people here, including myself, Khandra, Dorothy, Liz. We're on the membership committee a couple years ago, and we had meetings that set up a policy that was responsible for over $30,000 in consulting leader grants. We did keep minutes, and I would have been happy to announce our meetings and to stream them. I think when that kind of money is changing hands, in these times like this, I think it actually serves our movement to have a little bit of extra effort to make things transparent. Thank you.
And then against? Oh.
No, actually.
Was okay.
So where we have the stack right now is that Jackie is going to speak in response to John Dakin's 4, and then an additional stack we have Liz will speak for, and then and then Emily Newman will speak against.
I'm just going to finish my story. The organization, Building Bridges of Asheville, is an organization that's dealt with racism for 31 years now. It's a 9-week session. The beauty of it is that, well, maybe there's several little gems. One of them is that there's a different topic on racism each week. Racism in education, racism in public health, or health in the healthcare system, racism, each week. The first hour is a presentation. The second hour, you go into your small group, and you are with that small group and discuss the topic in what I like to call a safe space. People in Building Bridges call it now a brave space. It's not a critical space. It's a lay-led or all-volunteer organization for 31 years. Which is miraculous to me. It has worked, however, because you just turn it over to the people who step up the next time. And and you trust that they will do what you're not willing to do yourself anymore. I mean, if I were willing to be on the board still, then I would do it maybe slightly differently from the way the current board does it. I wouldn't call it a brave space without saying it's a safe place to bravely say what you're really thinking and feeling. 30 seconds, Jackie. Thank you. I am against. I am against this because I think we are in the same place. We are a society that believes in the inherent worth and goodness of individuals, the inherent worth and goodness of each of us. We have to trust.
Go ahead.
So, Jackie, I applaud what you say, and we all want to get there. But we have to do some things this year that will make us feel that we're being heard. Many of us feel, I've heard that on many different levels. Somebody wasn't heard, this person wasn't heard, I didn't know, I didn't see, they didn't share. So we can simply do a template of the date, time of meeting, who was there, when the next meeting is, and the action items. We don't have to do a 5-page minute for every committee or board meeting or committee meeting. And if it helps us heal, then let's do it, because I don't want to have another conversation on transparency. So let's move forward. I am suggesting a yes vote because of the emotion, not the logic. There's a lot of emotion in the air. So, I didn't even use 90 seconds. Wow. Okay.
And then I think last up is Emily.
So Emily from Brooklyn and DC, I think that we need to be listening to the fact that a lot of the doers, for example, Rihanna and Greg, are uncomfortable and they and would like to rework this. So I think that there is some. So it's not a no, absolutely never. It is not quite in this form. Let's tweak it so that it is satisfactory to both the note takers and the attendees of the meetings and the listeners to the meetings. I think it is also important to note, knowing how many files the AEU has accumulated over the years, how difficult it is to know how the updating and the location and the editing possibility, knowing how people do not read minutes thoroughly, do not read emails, need constant reminders. I worry that that we are creating a lot of work and also creating a lot of work on the membership to keep up with everything. And sometimes people need to process outside of meetings and have those follow-up emails. I can also speak as a note taker that it is exhausting to try to be thinking and contributing as well as recording everything. So I'd like us to spend a little bit more time to develop this.
All right, thank you everyone for some very spirited discussion about this. So as we said before, the amended ballot will go out with the option for the policy removed. So you can either vote yes for the amendment to be adopted as to the bylaws, or no to not adopt it in the bylaws. And yes, there's an abstain option on all of that, everything. And so our last bylaw amendment for discussion is the definition of emergency. And I think your agenda says it is a ranked choice ballot. However, in discussing this and thinking it through, the original motion, the language is not currently in our bylaws. So that would have to be adopted first, and then we would consider the amendment to that language, right? So there will be two questions. Both of them would be a yes or a no, and abstain, okay? And so First up, is there a motion to adopt the bylaws amendment to Article 4, Section 2 to include a definition of emergency? And Rhiannon? Oh, sorry. Is there a motion first? Yes. Okay. Is there a second? And then, if you want to discuss any changes that were made to the final version.
Okay, so a quick summary on the purpose of this bylaw. So the previous bylaws does not really give any definition of what an emergency situation is. So this will define what kind of constitutes an emergency, establishes how it's declared, what kind of temporary actions can be taken, the notification requirements to the board at the start and the end of the emergency period, and then the requirement of the board to approve those actions or ratify those actions in order for continued implementation, and the assurance that the officers involved in the emergency are acting in good faith. So essentially, kind of putting some guidelines around what can happen during an emergency period. Any clarifying questions?
Okay. If there are no clarifying questions, would anybody like to speak for or against this amendment to the bylaws? All righty. So then next up, we will, there's a motion, or hear a motion to adopt the amendment to this new, or proposed amendment to the bylaws, Article 4, Section 2, Part 1C by Carolyn Parker. Sorry, is there a motion? Is there a second? Okay, you got that. Carolyn, can you,
Thank you. I'm having technical problems with my computer, so I won't be able to read the exact language of what my amendment says to you, but it simply is to take out what I will call casually and perhaps imperfectly a laundry list of opportunities for the officers or others to act during an emergency, listing the kinds of things that they might want to do. It seems to me that that list is rather more positive than restrictive, and my motion is to remove the list and change the language to say that really just do what you need to do. Oh, there it is, up there. Yes, just do what you need to do, what is essential to meet the elements of the emergency. Because after that, you would then go through the requirements of the full motion or the full amendment to notify the board and move back to regular operations. So it's not to restrict operations in an emergency, but it's not to encourage moving the office or hiring and firing staff or anything like that. Let's just do what we need to do, kind of thing. So it's narrowing it down a little bit. And I need to say, if I've got some seconds, Rhiannon and the Mid-Atlantic group has been incredibly generous in accepting my minor tweaks here and there, and I really appreciate it. This is something that they couldn't quite take, but I think it's important, so I've offered it. Oops.
and I just want to clarify that if the original amendment is not approved, then this one becomes moot, just so people understand, right, what happens. And so now, is there anyone who would like to speak for or against this motion? Okay, for. Anybody on Zoom want to speak for or against this amendment to the amendment? Oh, thank you. We have 1 for and 1 against. All righty. So Richard will speak for the amendment, to the amendment. Or did I do clarifying questions for this? Okay.
I speak for it only because it offers a real clarification for the powers of the officers as acting as an executive committee in times of emergency. And I think it's really a common way to give them authority, but to sort of limit it and say that if there's more money that needs to be spent or to be an obligation to be formed by the emergency, that it's limited up to $10,000. Any more than that would have to go to the full board. And I would say this is a fairly typical kind of a explanation and a grant of authority. If there's any major expenditure of money, it's really got to be done by the full board. But it accommodates the concept of an emergency.
Right, Rhiannon?
Okay. So the reasoning behind putting some examples in there wasn't to give permission, but to show the extent at which something qualifies as an emergency. It's not just like, oh, oops, we forgot, mail this letter one day. It's an emergency. We got to drop everything. It's like really serious things, like, death, natural disaster type of things. So that was the reasoning for putting examples in there, to show the level at which the expectation is for an emergency. And then the money line is mostly what I have the issue with. I could take or leave having the examples in there. But for one thing, we already have a policy on our delegation of authority policy that has that $10,000 limit, that above that the board has to approve. So it's already a requirement. And two, putting money limitations in the bylaws is really tricky, because how do you account for inflation? Do you update the bylaws every so many years just to up the level? How do you really account for, like, if it's a real emergency, like, how do you define what's an appropriate amount to satisfy an emergency? So I'm just really concerned about putting numbers in bylaws, since one, we already have a policy, and two, I just don't think that's a sustainable way to write our bylaws. Thank you.
All right, so if there are no more speakers for or against, to clarify on the ballot, it would look like two options, right? The first would be, if you are in favor of the amendment, you would have to approve it first, and then a second vote to consider or to adjust the language to include the amendment to that amendment, right? So two different votes, yes, no, abstain votes for this issue. No, there's no ranking. Yes, no, simple. All right.
I just tried to vote on the bylaws amendment, and it's saying that the voting closed on July 28th, 24 at 12:09 p.m.
Yes.
That really,
Okay, so to clarify, we had prepared the ballots to go out, and then a point of order was raised and resolved so that the ballot related to the Sunshine Amendment, the proposal was removed as one of the choices. So now we will issue a new ballot with the new language, or the only the amendment as an option to vote yes, no, or abstain. So you should look
are you
out
saying
for
all of the
another
bylaws
email,
amendments?
and you would vote again. All right.
But it's saying that it's closed on July 28th at 12:09.
Well, she's saying it's closed, so they'll get the notification that that ballot is closed, and they can't vote. They won't be able to vote. Yeah. So look out for that additional email where you can vote. Yeah, that too, right? All right, and closing words.
So it's not just on the Sunshine Law, it's on all of the bylaws.
Can you all hear me? Am I on? Yes. Okay. I had actually chosen these words to open us, but I will use them to close us. And they come from my colleague, Rev. Nancy McDonald Ladd, and it's a poem entitled Let It Be Known for NP with Gratitude. Let it be known that when the world was shrouded in sorrow, good people got together and debated the bylaws. Let it be known that when the seeds of the new world germinated, they did so out of season and under the surface, when most of us were too busy, flailing too loudly to sense their stirring. Let it be known that the world as it is has always been the water, we the fish, swimming restlessly, trying to summon up a landscape beyond the bowl in which we might survive our freedom together. Let it be known that in this moment we were tired from the swimming and the long labor of our imagining. And let it be known that even so, that we were too busy and too afraid, the seeds still stirred in the wild hearts and jagged places of the weary world. And we found the courage to tell stories bigger than the boundaries we laid out for ourselves, which dictated the narrow circumference of our dreaming. Thank you.
Hi, I hope, okay, great. So, am I on? Okay. Like, I hear myself louder. It seems like, okay. Anyway, we're a little punchy this morning. I got my caffeine in me. Okay, so folks, thank you so much for your patience. I just want to stress again that if you've already gotten the ballot, it is now void because of this point of order. We will need to do complete new ballots. And just for clarification, all delegates, you'll get a ballot for the bylaws amendments, okay? And when I say delegates, I include society delegates, leaders, past presidents, affiliates, NES, FES, okay. Now, and board members, thank you. Now, there will be a separate ballot for those who are voting for your society, okay? Just recognize that you'll get a separate ballot. That was done last year, so I think it's easier to do it that way. So just please be patient. That will be sent out later today. The deadline for submitting your ballot is the same, would be midnight tonight, okay? So thank you for your understanding. Let us know if you have any issues. Okay. All right. The other thing I wanted to point out is that for those on Zoom, I did send it as a link, but we have platform today, and our most newly minted clergy leader, Louise Jett, will speak at the platform. That will start at 1 p.m. There is a separate Zoom link, so please make sure, because we had several people in the wrong Zoom room this morning, including myself. So please make sure you're going to the right Zoom registration and link for that. Lastly, presidents. In the past, there have been a president's breakfast. I didn't quite get it together for that. But if you would like, presidents, let's, hang out for lunch. I do. There is a table designated for presidents for lunch. And lunch is just across the hallway for those in person and the lower assembly room. Okay, lunch will be provided back here. Is it back here? For the platform? No, platform. Oh, I'm sorry. And platform will be the upper assembly where we have been all day Saturday. And also that's where the board meeting will be. So the platform starts at 1 p.m. The board meeting starts at 2:30. Okay, this is Central Time, folks. All right. Thank you so much.
And yeah, can I get a motion to adjourn? All those in favor of adjourning, leave the room.